Hello everyone, how we doing? Welcome to the stream. Are we good? Hello, Rishi, TJ, Kian, Casper, Ashish, Blackblade, Alex, Ross, Thanos, Anama, Shanky, Claire, Dyson, Tom, Caleb, Vampy, Tristan, Antonio, Callum, Camille, Alton, Necrosis, Martin, Rishi, Melina, good to see ya. The Toastman, Emmanuel, Connor, Keeman, Leon, Marlon. And it's gone too quickly now. I can't keep up. How we doing, everyone? Welcome to the stream. Let's talk about the Styrian Grand Prix. Happened yesterday, okay? The race. I'm tearing up already at the thought of it. Look, it's one of them, innit? It's one of them that not every game can be a 3-2, a 4-0. Sometimes you have these 0-0 draws that play out. These races that aren't the most enthralling. I mean, we've been spoilt this year. We have been spoilt this year. That the standard of race we've seen so far this year has been very, very good. So when a race like this comes along, which isn't as exciting, it's a bit of a shame. But the rain never came, which is a big part of that. There was a lot of build-up around rain. We know rain makes for good races. No rain. It fell like 30 minutes after the race ended. Obviously. But there you go. Thank you, Louis, for the $2.99. Can't believe you did that to me on Twitter, Tommo. I don't know what you're talking about, Louis. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. I do know what you're talking about. We'll keep that to ourselves. Because then other people might fall for it. If I say what it is, then you won't fall for it. So we're going to start, as we always do, by ranking the race out of 10. I've already seen a lot of numbers popping up in the chat. A lot of 4s, 5, 6. Interesting. Haven't seen one lower than 4, which is actually quite good. Because again, look, out of 10, if it is a dead race, it has to be like a 2 or a 1. If it is a great race, it has to be an 8 or a 9. There's no like, oh, it's 7. Like that would be very British of me to just be like 7 every race, to sit on the old fence. But no, we're not doing it like that. We're not doing it like that. So I've seen a lot of 4s. 2, Marcos Gonzalez with a 0. Damn, Marcos. You not easily pleased, you are, mate. Fair play. You know what? Entirely up to you, pal. 8s from Alton. I mean, don't know what race you were watching, mate. Oh, wow. And thank you, Javier, for the $50 Mexican. Tommo, man, you're the ultimate jinx. I mean, I am. I kind of am. I mean, everyone was gassing up George before the race because he did so well in qualifying. But also in backseat driver, I did predict Gasly podium just before the race started. And then Charles crashed into him. So, fantastic. Anyway, right. So, my rating for the race, I mean, I feel like I've managed to go with the consensus here. I've given it a 4 out of 10 for the Styrian Grand Prix. There were parts that were interesting. Perez catching Bottas towards the end was quite exciting. It's a shame we didn't get an extra lap because I'd have loved to have seen that move gone for and Bottas defending that. Would have liked to have seen that. Charles was making a lot of moves through the field, which was cool, but there was a big ass DRS train with, I think it was Fernando, wasn't it, at the front. And I mean, the first lap, yeah, obviously there was the incident with Gasly and Giovinazzi got spun out and Latifi had a puncture. And I mean, other than that, it wasn't the most exciting race. Like the gap at the top was pretty consistent. Perez was stuck by Lando for a bit, got past, was catching Bottas, but then wasn't, but then was. It's just one of them, isn't it? It's one of them, it won't live long in the memory. Again, we were spoiled at the Red Bull Ring last year. This year, no SC, no VSC, no yellow flag. Exactly, Brett. Would have been I was surprised there was no, at least VSC with the debris from the Gasly, because that rear left of the AlphaTauri just seemed to explode. It was unfortunate to not see something come out, but is what it is. So let's go through the race results. Obviously, Max Verstappen wins from Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas, Hambot, that same podium. Obviously, it is much more interesting when Max is at the top of that. That's 4 race wins out of 8 races so far this year for Maximus of Verstappen. Lewis just didn't have, he said it himself, they just didn't have the pace, Mercedes, to keep up with the Red Bull. There was times where you thought maybe it's closing in, but very, very brief times, and then that gap would just extend itself again and then go back down. And Perez P4 again, almost caught Bottas. Norris P5, phenomenal from the man once again. I mean, the kid's just crazy. He's points in every race, consistently best of the rest. What more can you say? Carlos Sainz P6, great recovery drive. Leclerc, Stroll, Alonso, Tsunoda round out the top 10. We will delve more into these later on. Just want to give a little. I just want to show off this graphic, all right? Because I like how this graphic looks, all right? I think it's quite a nice looking graphic, if I do say so myself. But anyway, now we've got to get into my driver of the day, my struggle of the day, and my team of the day. Sorry, not of the day. Ignore me. Of the weekend. So I'm not just looking at the race, I'm looking at qualifying as well, and how that's impacted where you start in the race, and how, for example, Kimi from P18 to P11, fantastic race, but very poor qualifying. So I'll take that into account when I'm considering it. Obviously, I did ask you lot, as I always do. I put a tweet out last night with links to the polls. So we're going to look at what your collective struggle, driver, and team of the day are as well. So, obviously, driver of the weekend. For me, there's three big names that come to me straight away, which is Max Verstappen, George Russell, Lando Norris. The reason I've not said Carlos in that top 3 is because he had a very poor qualifying. And as much as his recovery drive was great, that Ferrari should have been best of the rest. And because of Charles crashing into Pierre, because of Carlos having a poor qualifying, Lando finished ahead of both of them. Lando didn't really put foot wrong. So for me, it's out of them 3. As much as Carlos, fantastic race. In terms of just the race, probably Carlos is maybe better than him and Verstappen. Obviously, struggle with the weekend. We've got Ricciardo, who finished down P13. We've got Ocon, who finished P14. And again, look relative to their teammates. That's how you've kind of got to measure these things. I mean, Mazepin was like 35 seconds behind Schumacher, I think, by the end of it. Pretty close in qualifying, but geez, not good. Again, struggle. I'm trying to isolate driver performance. Who's had a bad race as an individual? Who's had a bad race? So I wouldn't class George in that, because George was fantastic. It was just very unfortunate for him that DNF in his car. And then obviously team of the weekend. I mean, obviously Red Bull won 4. Mercedes didn't really do much wrong. They just didn't have the pace that Red Bull seemed to have. Ferrari pulling out a 6 and 7 when they didn't seem to have the pace in qualifying. Difficult to say. I've gone with these 3. I've gone with Max driver of the weekend, because he didn't put a foot wrong all weekend. And as fantastic as George's performance was, we never got to see the end of it. It was taken away from us. If George had finished out that race in P8, his driver of the weekend for me. But Max, not a foot wrong. Qualified P1, finished P1. Didn't even look uncomfortable at any stage. It's a pretty standard day out for Max now. Like, these are the standards he's setting. Lewis didn't look like he had a chance. As well, while we're talking about drive of the weekend, I know it's just I know it doesn't mean anything, but how can Charles get driver of the day when he took someone out on the first lap? Like, yes, he made the recovery drive. Good for him, but he shouldn't have crashed in the first place. He started P7, finished P7. Like, yes, that recovery stage, fantastic. Well done, Charles. But obviously the Ferrari had more pace than the cars around it. So, look, it was great. Don't get me wrong, the recovery drive, fantastic. But the fact that he was in that position in the first place was his own fault. So he can't get driver of the day. No way. Thank you, Louis, for the 499. What's your opinion on the weird Haas promo with a weird Mazepin spinner thing? I think it made Gunter look like a right knob. I thought it was quite funny. The Mazza spin to his face. You know my thoughts on Nikita. I don't really like the guy, but as an isolated piece of social media content, it was quite funny. So meh is what it is. Also, thank you. Why not Azuketsu for the $200 Mexican. Damn. Thank you, pal. Thank you very much. Far too generous. Well, it's time for Perez to get a new pit crew. That stop ruined his race. It's a good point. Spoiled his chance of getting P3, that for sure. New pit crew. Red Bull are the best pit crew, so it's just unfortunate. Was it Baku where Max had a long stop and Sergio had a really short one? So it's not perfect, but not great. Also, Leclerc without any penalty. That race was strange. Driver of the day, really. Yeah, I don't understand how Leclerc doesn't get a penalty for that. Maybe it's because sometimes they're like, oh, well, when it's first lap, we don't, look at... But I don't care if it's first lap or final lap. If someone's takes someone out, you should be applying the same punishment, as far as I'm concerned. Also, thank you, Barat, for the 100 rupees. Big up. You've donoed before, mate. I appreciate that. No way Leclerc was driver of the day. Best Max. Close second Science. Struggle for the weekend. George, Danny Rick. Team maybe Ferrari. Yeah, again, I agree. I don't know how Leclerc's won that. I get it on face value because it's a nice drive back through, and that's obviously why people voted for him. But come on. Max, in terms of a complete performance, Max was he just led from, he led FP1, FP2. Hamilton got FP3, but pace-wise, and in qualifying, he was paced well ahead of Sergio. What was it? 5 tenths? Hang on, let me look up. I can't remember what the gap between them two in quali was, because this is a short circuit as well. So Max did a 103.841. Sergio 10. Okay, actually no. To be fair, that's closer than I thought it was. 104. Yeah, so that's like 3 tenths. About 3 tenths, which is about where it should be actually. To be fair, it is obviously a short circuit, but no, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, point. Yeah, it was like 0.3 between them in quality, so not bad. But yeah, Max faultless, didn't put a foot wrong. He hasn't got a driver of the weekend from me so far, and I felt like it was about time I rewarded him because he has just been so good so far this year. Ocon, struggle of the weekend. It's a weird one, isn't it? Ocon seemed to have a really good start of the year, not just relative to Alonso, because he did have the better of Alonso at the start of the year. Not just that, though, he was doing well. He was getting in the points quite consistently. The first 3 or 4 races that he finished, he was in the points. I think it's maybe 3. I can't remember off the top of my head. So that was great. And then all of a sudden, obviously, Alonso's improved, sure, but also Ocon seems to have gone backwards relative to everyone as well, because we know the Alpine didn't have much pace, hence why Fernando was the front of that DRS train. But because he qualified well, and Alonso had a great start, he chucked a move up the inside, didn't he? They went like 3 wide. He was on the inside of Pierre when Pierre got hit by Charles. quality start by Alonso, and Ocon was just nowhere. The Alpine's really struggled on pace, but yeah, just because he had the poor qualifying session. P17 in qualifying, out in Q1, is terrible, is shocking, is not good. You can't ignore that, and wasn't able to do much in the race. Unfortunately for Esteban, they need to go back to the drawing board at Alpine because that car doesn't have pace, but also, yeah, he's had a couple of poor weekends on the spin now. But this is what I said. As soon as his new contract got announced, I predicted him for struggle of the weekend last weekend. He wasn't the worst, but he was one of, and now he's had a shocker here. I'm obviously not serious when I'm saying that he's just kicking his feet up because he's got his contract, but these things have happened. Also, thank you, generous people watching. Thank you, Helsen, for the 50 SEKs. Do you think that Checo is the best new team driver? Before I thought it was Sainz, but now it's switched for me. I think love from Sweden. Thank you, Helsen from Sweden. Appreciate it. That's the krona, isn't it? Swedish krona. I still think Sainz has been the best so far. When you count all 8 races, Sainz, I think, has got the most out of his package. That sounds weird. Relative to everyone else who's jumped into their new cars. Obviously, Seb had a bit of a meh race. Stroll got in the points, which was solid. Perez, obviously, the race pace is very good from Sergio. And again, I've said this 1,000 times. This is where Pierre and Alex weren't at the standard that Sergio is because the race pace is there. The quali pace, though, isn't quite, and I feel like it's been is 6-1 to Max in quali against Sergio, and it was Imola where Sergio got the better of Max and Max made a mistake on his quick lap. So pace wise, Max has very much had the measure of Sergio, but Max is phenomenal, and Max is, I mean, that's more credit to Max than it is to take anything away from Sergio. So Checo's up there though. I think Sainz, when you look at consistency as well, I think Sainz slightly edges it, but Perez probably second best, and then maybe Vettel. Vettel's had good highs, but also the consistency still hasn't quite been there over the course of the first 8 races for me. Thank you, Stratos, as well, for the €10. Ferrari seem to have better race pace than McLaren, so if they sort out their quali pace, we could have a spicy battle between Lando and the Ferraris. Hopefully Daniel Ricciardo is in there too. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to make of the Ferrari. The McLaren seems to be more consistent. It seems to be good across the board, whereas Ferrari's peaks and troughs are a bit higher. You got to think based on race pace and based where Charles and Carlos started, they should have been the best of the rest, and they probably will be best of the rest next weekend for the Austrian Grand Prix, not the Styrian. It's one of them, innit? I think Lando's driving out of his skin. I think Daniel... We'll talk about Daniel in a bit, and there's a reason I didn't put him struggle of the weekend, because yes, he had a poor qualifying, but he was unfortunate in the race with that half a lap where he had no power. He made some great moves at the start, and then it's not his fault that the engine just decides to be like, nope. So I reckon Daniel was looking for points. Again, still relative to Lando, he's pretty far from Lando, but not as bad as it looks with him finishing, P13 in the end. But yeah, he had a poor start when he went to Renault. Took him a bit of time to get used to that car. Adaptability doesn't seem to be Daniel's strong suit. I think that seems pretty clear to me now. Some drivers are very adaptable, can jump into anything and be quick. Your Fernandos, your Carloses, but Danny Rick doesn't seem to quite have that, unfortunately. And then team of the weekend, Red Bull have obviously delivered a fantastic package, and Max just ran away with the race. Sergio couldn't have really. I mean, it was fine margins in qualifying between him. He qualified behind Where did he qualify? Fourth, didn't he? No, he qualified behind Lando, didn't he? Which obviously you'd expect. Again, look, this is the thing. You'd expect with that Red Bull. But for me, that again, there must still be something. The fact that Sergio Perez, who has never been known for his qualifying, but he's never been a bad qualifier. Like, there's a difference between like not being exceptional at qualifying and being a bad qualifier. But the fact that he can jump into that Red Bull, which is the quickest car now, and still qualify behind a McLaren. Because look, and I know people go, oh, you're biased. But, real talk, like, this Red Bull is clearly quicker than the Mercedes. The car, right? Compared to last year. Or, right, objectively, you can say that it is at least closer to the Mercedes, all right? Whether you want to say it's the quicker car, right now I think it is. I think it's the quicker car. Like, I think that's pretty clear. But obviously, you can't then, because the Red Bull's relatively quicker relative to the Mercedes, you can't then compare Checo and Alex in qualifying when, you know, the gaps are bigger. But then I suppose it depends on the midfield, I guess, and where that is relative to both the Mercedes and the Red Bull. Have Red Bull pulled away and Mercedes stayed the same relative to the midfield? No. There's a lot of nuance to that discussion. But anyway, right. Those are my thoughts. Now for yours. So again, on Twitter, I shared polls to get your driver of the weekend, your struggle of the weekend, and your team of the weekend. And this is what you came up with. 33% of you said Max Verstappen for your driver of the weekend. 21% Russell and 15% Sainz. That is 15, isn't it? I can't read the text because it's small. I hope you can. Struggle of the weekend, 60% of you went Daniel Ricciardo. Only 22% said Ocon, 9% Russell. Again, Russell, I get like people, it's a struggle because it's out of his hands. But again, I think Daniel Ricciardo is harsh given the problems he had. Given the problems he had. No Norris driver of the weekend, which, I mean, again, when you consider the whole weekend, Lando's race was calm. It was quiet and it was uneventful for all the right reasons. And finished ahead of both Ferraris, where the Ferraris on race pace, you've got to say, probably were quicker. But and then team of the weekend, 53% Red Bull, 34% Ferrari. And to be fair, Ferrari are a good shout, I think, for team of the weekend. As much as they were clearly unable to give Carlos and Charles a package that could qualify well, although Charles still qualified P7. At the same time, their strategy, managing to help save Charles's race by sticking him on the hards and then, you know, getting those softs off early doors. Credit to Ferrari. And then 5% Mercedes. Mercedes didn't really do much wrong this weekend. They just didn't have the ultimate pace. I think, you know, Lewis qualified P2, finished P2. Just didn't have the pace, but didn't really do anything wrong. And you know what? Bottas, fair play. Like, finished P3 ahead of Sergio. Again, you've got to say the Red Bull is probably the quicker car at the minute. And he finished ahead of a Red Bull. So I think all in all, Bottas's weekend was actually pretty solid. He qualified ahead of Lewis as well. It's just a shame about that bloody spin in the pit lane. Because if he'd have started P2, then do I reckon Lewis would have got past him? Maybe not. Maybe not. Thank you, Barat, again. Big up, mate, for the 100 rupees. Coming to terms with Lewis not winning, as you said, do you think Merck have given up on development this year? Love your content, bud. Love Minton. Thank you, mate. Minton's asleep in the bedroom. Of course he is. Teenager. He literally sleeps till like 1, maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon when nothing's going on. Yeah, it sounds like Merck have stopped development, as far as I'm aware that they have. Lewis, I know Lewis is pandering for some upgrades, which of course he is, because, you know, there's no guarantees going into 2022 that Mercedes are going to be at the top. You can't guarantee that because other teams have been able to offset resource earlier than Mercedes. I mean, and obviously Lewis knows this is a great chance for his 8th world title. Maybe he really wants his 8th world title and he wants to get out. Maybe. I don't know. But of course he don't. He's Lewis Hamilton, 7 times world champion. He's a born winner. Like, he's not going to be happy to settle with P2 every race. But at the same time, he's got the maturity to understand when the right time to make a move, when the right time to, when the right time to balance it all comes out. Ocon suffers from vandorization. You can't really say that because it's literally 4-4 in qualifying between Alonso and Ocon. So, but yeah, I feel like I've mentioned this before, that the fact that this season is more competitive may have invigorated Lewis's, desire. Because as much as he doesn't like losing, I think he really relishes this competition that he hasn't had for a while. So credit, fair play, enjoying it. Thank you, Javier, for the 200 mex again. Big up, mate. Checo's never gonna be consistently great in qualifying. He's been in the sport 11 years, and that's just not him. As long as he's top 6, he'll make up with the race pace and fight for podiums every race, which is what they signed him to do. Yeah, and I agree. I think ultimately Checo may not have that. Yeah, I don't think he's got that natural out-and-out one-hit pace, but he makes up for it for not only being great in race in terms of great passing, great wheel-to-wheel. He pushes it a bit at times, Checo. He's pushed a couple of people into the wall, almost. The squeeze on Gasly at Spa comes to mind. But at the same time, his time management is, him and Lewis are top tire managers. I think they're the top 2 in that conversation, and that makes up for it because again they can do the mad strategies that they weren't able to do with Alex and Pierre, and constructors looks like it's going Red Bull's way, unless Valtteri really pulls it out of his arse, which I don't see happening. Thank you, Mr. Super Chacho, for the $5. What's up with Daniel having a pretty decent race before having a sad performance next race? Also, Mr. Points, George Russell. It's so sad. It's funny. Sad times for George indeed. Daniel obviously had a good race last weekend at France. Quali just wasn't there. I guess the problem is where it's such a short track, the margins are so fine. Again, if you're not completely in tune and completely sorted. Daniel almost went out in Q1. He was like P15, wasn't he, in Q1? I think he was P15. So then that's kind of when the margins are so fine, those issues are exacerbated. But then in FP2, he finished second. So he obviously had pace. But by what he said, he had pace on the Friday, and then in the Saturday, there's just no pace. And then obviously in the race, again, great start. Engine decided to be nope, which was out of his control. It was a shame, but Daniel, based on Renault, he takes time to get used to the hardware that he's in. Hopefully he will, because we know Daniel at his best is phenomenal, but we're not seeing that Daniel at the minute. I do hope we can get to a position where we see it again. Thank you, M. Brown, as well, for the $4.99. What do you think the driver of the year has been so far? In my mind, it was Lando getting P3 at Imola in the wet. The driver of the year. Oh, man. I don't know. I'd love to give you an answer. I'd love to really consider that, but I don't really know. Well, because basically, so I'm going to do, once we hit mid-season, I'm going to do a mid-season review or report and rank all the drivers and how I think they've been doing, and I'll probably include something like what's been the standout performance, what's been the worst performance. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to give that one some thought. I think because again, like team performance as well. So I think team performance, I think Vettel at Monaco was right up there. But yeah, I'm not sure. I have to give that some thought. Okay, cool. So on to, we've got we've done all this. Now, time for the leaderboard to see where they all sit. My winners, my struggles. Verstappen joins the board of Driver of the weekend ranking after 8 of 23 rounds. Seb is the only person to get 2 of them. So congratulations so far, Seb. Top of the leaderboard. And then it's all Yuki in Bahrain, Lando in Italy, Fernando in Portugal, Charles in Spain, George in France. It was like Max had to be on here. Like, I was kind of like, obviously, this was Max's most dominant performance. 0 feet were put wrong. So he had to get it. He had to get on the board. And as for struggles, well, Bottas leads that one after Italy and Baku. Not good. Esteban comes in as well. So again, we've got, after 8 rounds, it's been pretty much a different driver every single time. Keeping things mixed up, you know. But and yes, I could have put the Styrian flag instead of the Austrian flag, but I'm just going to put 2 Austrian flags because we all know what that means, right? And the Styrian flag, I don't really, it's just green and white, isn't it? It's just like, it's like Poland, but green. So they're the rankings, how they sit relative. All right. Now we've got to look at, well, so Thursday I didn't do a preview, did I? I was away with Hannah. We went to some posh camping place. It was quite fun. It was nice to get out for a few days. But I did do predictions before. Well, to be fair, I did my predictions after FP1 and 2, which is kind of cheating. But turns out that actually they gave me a misled impression of how this weekend was going to go. So my predictions that I made on this was the Friday I did, were these. Which, I mean, Bottas. Yeah. Daniel was not driver of the weekend. Did I jinx it? Probably. I seem to have this innate ability to destroy drivers' weekends by opening my mouth. So, yeah. Ricciardo was not driver of the weekend. Bottas was not struggler of the weekend by any stretch of the imagination. He was one of the stronger drives, I think so, to be honest, throughout. Team of the weekend, McLaren. I mean, Lando had a really good race. So, and I got the race winner right because, of course. But yeah, not my strongest predictions-wise. I was definitely better at France. All right, cool. And finally, to wrap things up, well, what I'll do, we'll go through fantasy and then I'll answer a few questions in chat. So don't ask them yet, but we'll get to it. Fantasy League. I turboed Gasly, didn't I? What a knobhead. I took it off Lando, turboed Gasly because I was like, Honda power, Red Bull was strong, AlphaTauri, Red Bull 1, 2, 3, 4 in practice at times. And then Charles took him out. And Russell -11. This was looking so good. After qualifying, I was so happy with the changes I made. I took out Ocon. I took out Sainz. Ocon coming out was good. I should have kept Sainz in, obviously, in hindsight. But Russell was looking on for points. If Russell would finish that race, he'd have racked him in. If Gasly hadn't been taken out, he'd have had a good race as well. I don't know, but I've got Perez in my team now as well. So Perez brought the points home. I feel like this is a strong team. This is a strong team now. I feel like to see out the rest of the year, I don't see why I would change up too much more of this team. Because I think Perez is only going to get more comfortable in the Red Bull. He's only going to secure more podiums. Max is running away with it. Yeah, that's what I think. And yeah, you can see my league code here. So if you do want to join my fantasy league, F43C472847, feel free to join. And then in the global league, I was in the top 30. I think I was 36,000th out of the 930,000. Now I've gone down to 64. So not a great weekend. Could have been worse. Could have been a lot worse. But is that now 7% in the world? Okay, cool. So yeah, not great. Not great fantasy from me. But you can't win them all, right? I don't know why I took Turbo off of Lando. I feel like as soon as I put it back on him, then I'm going to curse him. But he just always delivers because Lando Norris is unreal right now. But anyway, back to the results. I'm mirrored now because then I'm looking towards that rather than away when I'm looking at the screen. Any more? I'll do 5 more minutes. Have I used my Mega Driver? Yes, I used Max at France. So, was it France? Yeah. So I got big points off my Mega Driver because Max secured the dub. Can I do a video ranking all the F2 livers? You know what? I've not cared about F2 this year. It's really strange. But I saw a tweet which I think highlighted why. Because last year I was banging into the F2. I loved it. I watched every race pretty much. But this year, because the gaps are so big between races, I don't know. I just can't get into it. It's a shame. It is a shame. Science did a P20 to P3 in Brazil, still didn't get driver of the day. So you know that man is underrated. Carlos is mad underrated. I think both the fact that Daniel's so far off Lando and the fact that Carlos is so close to Charles highlights that Carlos is serious. Carlos is serious. Serious fella. To be fair, Bottas and Perez fell that far behind because of our Lando kit. Yeah, true, but again, I mean, they're in the quicker cars. Like they should be able to get past Lando. I mean, credit to Lando for defending for as long as he did, and ultimately he put himself in the position where he was comfortable. So like, you got to give credit to Lando. Thank you, Tommo Nelson. Great name. It's probably Tommo, isn't it? For the 500 Japanese yen. Leclerc's overtakes, Kimi's defending, Russell's points fight, Checo blitzing, 19-second gap. It wasn't a classic, but was a solid race. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. Love the video. Thank you, Tommo. You are Tommo. You're Japanese Tommo. Love to see it. Actually, no, tell you what, who haven't we talked about? So we talked about Max. Again, Lewis didn't do too much wrong, just didn't have the pace. Valtteri, strong weekend from him, really. Obviously, it's shame about the spin in the pit lane. That was a bit embarrassing. But made it back onto the podium where arguably Sergio should be on there ahead of him. Lando, great. Carlos, great drive. Poor quali. Charles, great recovery. Just shouldn't have been there in the first place. Lance Stroll. Let's talk about Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll, his overtake on Fernando Alonso. Beautiful. On the first lap, wasn't it? I think it was first lap. Round the outside of turn 5, is it? I think it's turn 5. Quality into Q3 as well. Lance Stroll had a very, very good weekend. Very, very under the radar weekend from Lance Stroll. Really good. Cleared Alonso. Alonso was leading the train. Lance wasn't leading that train. Lance had a reasonable gap to Fernando, and they obviously sorted out his pits fine, so he ended up P8. Really good drive from Lance. Definitely under the radar. Fernando, again, like, great qualifying. It's the qualifying that got him that result, I think, because, again, he was leading the train. He was a slower car than the cars behind him, but kept him behind, and fair play, Fernando. Yuki, I mean, points, Yuki, I still think that I put this on Twitter. I think that AlphaTauri, as an overall consistent competitive package, might well be slightly better than the Ferrari. I think the Ferrari is a bit inconsistent. Ferrari's highs are higher for sure, but their lowers are lower. And I said this, if they had two Pierre Gasly's, problem is Pierre got caught up in the incident in Bahrain, first race, DNF. Well, didn't get any points. And Pierre's qualified. I saw it on Twitter. Pierre's qualifying this year has been insane. He's only been outside of Q3 once. And all the other times, he's pretty much like P6, like most of the time. So yeah, very, very, very good car. Yuki, again, I think it's got the raw pace. Good weekend this weekend, all things considered. Shame about his grid drop for that kind of block on Bottas. Again, it's just a reflection of his lack of experience, I think that. I felt it maybe been a bit harsh. I don't know. I guess him being where he was on Bottas's quick lap did slow Bottas down more than I would understand as a mere mortal, not a racing driver. Kimi, P18 to P11. Again, another fantastic drive on the day, but as for the weekend, terrible qualifying. So he shouldn't have been P18 in the first place. That car should not be finishing behind any Williams or any Haas. It was ahead of both Haas's, but behind both Williams. It was not good. Thank you, Himanshu, for the 100 rupees. I get that they have Dog's car, but we need to talk about how far back Mazepin is from Schumacher in every race. Couldn't agree more. 35 seconds, I think it was in the end. I think. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. Yeah, I mean, he's not there on merit. He's not a very good racing driver. He's the worst driver on the grid. I think that's just fair because you look at how far back he is. I'm sorry, it's just true. Thank you, Kalani, for the 5 Aussie dollars. Me again. Keep up the Checo time management level of content. Thank you, Kalani. I'll take that as a compliment because Checo is fantastic at managing the rubber. I know. He really is. Vettel qualified P12, finished P12. So, meh. It's one of them that, again, he was caught at the back of the train. So there wasn't really much he could do. I mean, Kimi obviously came past him. I think that's probably more a good strategy from Alfa Romeo than Seb not having pace because Seb had an okay weekend. I think it's about right for where that Aston Martin is. Just Stroll managed to have a very good quali and make a fantastic move on Alonso at the start. Daniel, we've already talked about. Esteban, we've already talked about. Tonio, just a very meh weekend for Giovinazzi, I think. Mick Schumacher P16. So again, ahead of Latifi. I think Schumacher's doing a great job. I've seen people mentioning in the chat about had a little ding dong, Haas. Was it because Mazepin actually, I'm going to give Mazepin some credit. Mazepin was up to P16 at the start. Now, do I think that's because Gasly hit Giovinazzi and that made Latifi go wide? I mean, obviously. Okay, so it's not really much credit, but that is a fact. But yeah, I mean, the gap by the end of the race, the consistent gap between Mazepin and Schumacher is huge. It is a vast gulf. And again, I don't really understand it because, look, Mazepin clearly has some talent. He's won races in Formula 2. He finished 5th. You know, the gap between Schumacher and Mazepin was, like, the gap between the F2 field, it's a spec series, like, is not massive. Yet in Formula 1, Schumacher's just, and Mazepin's nowhere. I don't understand why that gap's so big because, I don't know, maybe Mazepin's money, because look, as much as F2 is a spec series, the more money you have definitely helps. You can buy newer engines, you can keep the car maintained to a higher standard. Maybe having all that financial backing made Mazepin look better than he actually was in F2. I would not be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, they had a little battle, didn't they? I think Schumacher got past Maz and then Mazepin got him back because Mick locked up, but Mick ended up well ahead of him. So, I mean, at least they're doing something at the back. At least there's some kind of interesting behaviour going on at the back of the grid. Latifi, I mean, was unfortunate. Got caught by Gasly, gave him a puncher as far as I'm aware. Shocker. Mazepin, mud, remains in it. And then George and Gasly. So George had a power unit issue, I believe. They obviously pitted him. They changed the wheels, and then they were still there on the right-hand side with some like gas hose. So I don't know if it's like a hydraulic power unit thing. I'm not sure. Had to retire. Big Sag. He was P8. He was ahead of Alonso, I think. Wasn't he? Oh no, he might have been behind Alonso. He was in that train. Was he in that train? I can't even remember. But look, it sucks. But it is what it is. George's performance, like, it's one of them that, like, this performance is good. This performance on another weekend is good enough for points. But points are just, like, what? Say we just change it so the top 12 get points. Well, George has already got points then. Like, you know what I mean? It's an arbitrary number. Like, I think people look way too much into, he hasn't got any points. Like, but so, like, you can finish P12 and 0 DNFs and not get any points. Or you can finish P12, 4 cars in front of you DNF, and then you finish P8. You've done nothing different, but you got points. Doesn't mean your performance was any better. It's exactly the same performance, so it's what it is. Hello, Tommy. Welcome, Tommy WTF1. My handsome dog friend. And then Pierre, obviously, yeah. Taken out by Leclerc, couldn't do much. Rear left corner, just decided to go bye-bye. Sad times. But there you go. I'm going to wrap it there, everyone. It's been over 45 minutes, but less than 50 minutes. So thank you for everyone for tuning in. Subscribe to the channel. Check the button is greyed out. We're almost at 200k. Close. About 1,500 off now, I think. Just under 1,500 off. We're getting close. So yeah, I would appreciate if you subscribed and like the video because it helps the algorithm. Because this will live as a standalone video. So thank you to everyone who's not watching live and watch this after the fact. Also, thank you again, why not, Azuketsu for the 50 Mexican dollars. Even if you change it to the top 20 points, Maz will still not get any points. He'd still find a way, wouldn't he? He'd still find a way. But yeah, thank you everyone again for watching. Thank you all for taking the time. Let me go to the main screen. And new video I'm working on now. Hopefully Wednesday, if not Thursday. And then back with a preview stream also on Thursday. So hopefully I'll get the video out Wednesday because I'd ideally not have 2 videos on the same day. But yeah, we'll see. Thank you everyone again. I'll see you on the next one. Have a good one. Cheerio. Stay hydrated. Get vaccinated if you can. And also I've decided I'm going to give, if you were here last week, I said I was going to give the proceeds from one of my live streams to a charity. I'm going to give it to an animal charity. I haven't decided which one yet, but I'm going to give it to like a dog shelter or something because I love dogs. And you all love Minton. So, you know what I mean? It's kind of apt. All right, I'm actually going to go now. Goodbye, everyone. Have a good day. Cheerio. We're done. Goodbye. Bye.